A side, B side, what side are you on?
Welcome back. It's another episode of A Side B Side Podcast. What is going on? Adam missed you last week.
Yeah, I was very thrown off. I do not feel like I know what day it is now for like the last 10 days because we didn't have our normal schedule. So I was like, what day? Is it Tuesday? Is it Wednesday? Is it Friday? I need my little like life benchmarks to help me understand what day of the week it is.
So, of course, real quick, some shows. You know that What If started on Disney. Have you checked it out?
I have apps. You've watched both the first two episodes. I have not seen today's yet.
I've only watched the first. So I'm 2 behind. So I think when we are finished, I'm going to at least catch up to the second and maybe do the third.
Oh, I really enjoyed the first one. The second one is amazing.
Now, the second one is basically what if Star-Lord was Black Panther, correct?
Yes, and it is the last thing that Chadwick Boseman worked on.
Oh, wow. Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's his voice, and it is so good. I mean, and it's just there. It clearly wasn't written because it was done before his passing, yeah. But it is a beautiful, like the entire episode is a beautiful sort of tribute, tribute, love letter to Chadwick Boseman. And it's a really good episode and fun. And What If was always one of my favorite comics. And it's like one of the things that we would do, like my friends and I would do, like, what if this happened? What if that happened? And it's so brilliant how they're doing it in this sort of new, they're really relaunching the Marvel Cinematic Universe again because, there was such a definitive ending and now we're kind of doing this whole thing over again. Mm-hmm. And it's a really cool way to do it. And I love the what if. So I love the Captain Carter, the first episode. I thought that was really good. And then the what if T'Challa became Star-Lord is so good. And there's so many fun little cameos in it. They got like everybody, all the actors to do the voices.
Oh, that's
and there are it's so cool. And it's neat to see how things are a little bit different here and a little bit different there. I'm curious to see today's episodes because we're recording this on Wednesday as we do, and the third episode is out. I have not watched it yet today, but it'll probably be my reward for getting the podcast done when this is all over. So the Disney Plus, the whole series, all the series so far have been really exciting. And have you seen the new trailers for both the Eternals and the new Spider-Man movie that came out this week?
I have not seen the one for the Eternals, but I have seen the one for Spider-Man. And wow, I completely forgot Doctor Strange was going to be in it.
Yeah, well, and all they did was mention that it was mentioned that he would be in it. I don't think anybody expected this level of involvement.
Yeah, he's quite a big part of it.
Yeah, it's like it almost feels like Doctor Strange 2 and Spider-Man are kind of mashed together.
Yeah,
maybe we saw everything that he's in it in the trailer, but it sure feels like a lot.
I don't think we did. I don't think so. It'll be interesting. I am not huge into Doctor Strange, but I'm interested to see how this goes.
Yeah, I love Benedict Cumberbatch.
Like I watch him because he is, part of the Marvel Universe or whatever, but he's not like my favorite.
Yeah, and I think he's a relative. Like, it's interesting what they're doing now is the MCU, like, it launched on the backs of like the big names, but now we're into like I consider myself a pretty big comic nerd, and I've never read a Doctor Strange comic. Mm-hmm. I've never read the Eternals. Like, we're getting into like I've never read Shang-Chi, so this is like they're getting into like some obscure stuff. I'd never read the Guardians of the Galaxy, to be honest. So it's neat how they're really going deep into the roster, and one of those things where like it's creating new fans of stuff that's been around for like the Eternals have been around for a long time, and I was never all that interested. But then the new trailer comes out, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is gonna be fun.
Buff Kamal Nanjiani.
Yeah, and they finally show some of their powers in the new trailer, so you got to go watch it.
Okay, all right, I'll have to check that out. I'm trying to think. I have been super. We missed last week. So sorry. Oh, also thank you in the Czech Republic for listening. You guys are amazing. That's awesome.
And I was going to do this thing where I tried to learn how to say thank you in Czech. And then I realized that the nicest way I could do that is to not slaughter the word. So I'm just going to say thank you and not try to speak a language that I do not know. But I'm super excited. I tried and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to do this so poorly. So out of respect, I'm just going to say thank you and not
now I want to
slaughter
hear it. I want you.
No.
I want to hear.
No. Every time I say it, it's different and none of it's right. So it's like, it was very frustrating. I felt like I was in a sketch because I was just sitting here in my apartment and I would like have Google, say a word and then I would try to repeat it and it didn't go well. So I'm not going to do that. But it's super exciting. It's neat. What was it last week that you sent me that message that we had popped up on a chart and that I was like just randomly telling people about it at work. So like talking
cool.
with my tables.
I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty cool. So thank you.
It's really cool
for supporting the podcast. Really love it. Love you. So I have not seen a lot of movie. I didn't see any movies this past weekend because I've just been terribly busy.
It's a busy time of year. I mean, my kids, like last Wednesday, it was perfect for me that we took the day off because they started school. They're both in high school now. We just got school started up here already. The Minnesota State Fair, which is a huge thing in Minnesota, starts tomorrow. It just feels like everything is happening. I had 2 fantasy football drafts this week. It's just like a lot is going on.
Yeah, I'm home visiting my mom. This is the first time I've seen her in almost 2.5 years. So that was a big deal for me because I missed my mommy. Although I talk to her every day and she does listen to every podcast. It's not as being able
she's the executive producer.
Yeah. And I even said to her, I said, so you're not going to ask about the tattoos? And she's like, oh yeah, I made a note to ask you about that. She kept forgetting. So I had to show her the tattoos. Really funny.
I got in trouble because we mentioned it and then I saw my parents the next day after they had listened to it. I thought I was going to get like months of time before I had to talk to them about it. But of course I mentioned in the podcast and they listened to it. So I had to deal with it right away. It's like, well played, Adam. Way to put yourself in it.
All right. So this is episode 58. And so, Adam, that means you get to start.
Excellent. So for the A side this week, we are going to take a step back into the world of music. And Brooke, I think I may have mentioned to you, or I'm not sure if we talked about it in the podcast, but one of the things that I have enjoyed about this summer is I finally I splurged a little bit and got a record player back in April, and I've got all my old records out of storage. I had a record player for years, and then it broke, and then it just kind of was sitting there. It was one of those ones where it was like a record player, a CD player, a radio, and it had an auxiliary in, so it was like a little bit of everything. So the record player part broke, but I could still play CDs, and so I just didn't fix it for years. And then when I moved, I got rid of it, and I finally got a nice little suitcase record player and got my records back out. And so I've been diving back in to some of the records that I collected, and I do not have a extensive record collection by any stretch of the imagination. But I did collect some when I was in high school and college, and then it's kind of been one of those things where like I dip my toe in every 5 to 10 years, and then I forget about it and I dive back in. So I have been diving back in the last couple months And one of the neat things about the area of St. Paul that I live in, that there are several record stores along my public transportation route and my walking route. So I've been stopping into these record stores and kind of flipping through the stacks and looking for things that I haven't discovered. And a group that I was always a fan of, but had never really dove into their background or anything more than what I'd heard on the radio, was the Rolling Stones. And it definitely began as, when I was a kid, we always listened to either the news station in the morning on the way to school or the oldie station in the morning on the way to school, and the same thing in the afternoon. And we had about a 25, 30-minute commute every day. And so we'd either listen to the news or we would listen to oldies music. And I would start to, so I grew up in the 80s and 90s listening to music from the 50s, 60s, and 70s as my daily music. So I'm just rediscovering most of the popular music, especially of the 80s, because I was really young. And my top artists in from 1985 to probably 1990 were more like the Raffi and the Sharon Lois and Brahms and the Salties of the world. I wasn't as into popular music. So I've been kind of diving back into it. And the Rolling Stones were always a band that I really enjoyed when they would come on. And they kind of became, I like the Rolling Stones because my dad preferred the Beatles type of thing. So my dad was more of a fan of the Beatles, so I wanted to be a fan of the Rolling Stones. But I only knew their big hits from the 50s and 60s, the Hey You, Get Off of My Cloud, which was the perfect song for a kid whose favorite Care Bear was Grumpy Bear. It made sense that I would want people to get off my cloud. Things like, Paint It Black, Can't Get No Satisfaction, songs that I knew by heart, but didn't really know any of the background. And I was listening to our jukebox at work in April, and all of a sudden this song came on that I had never heard before. And I got super excited because we have a classic hits channel on our jukebox, and it doesn't often play new stuff. It plays every day. You can kind of know what time of day it is by what song's playing. And this is a new one that I hadn't heard before, and it was called Doom and Gloom, which was a single released by the Rolling Stones in 2012. And my brain went, what? They have music that they've released recently? And it was written, it definitely, the whole vibe is very much, felt like it fit pandemic. So I thought it might even be a brand new song for 2020. But that got me diving more into the Rolling Stones. And so I found some Rolling Stones records at the local record stores. We got Agartha on University Avenue and Cheapo here on Snelling, just down the road, that I checked out. And I found the live album from 1981, which was the year I was born. So I thought that was really cool and listened to that. And as I'm going through and trying to get more and more Rolling Stones albums, I stumbled upon the album from 1985 by Mick Jagger, and it was his very first solo album. And because I was 4 years old in 1985, I was not really paying attention to the rock music scene, and I had no idea.
How dare you? How could you not?
I know. I mean, there's just so many things on my plate as a 4-year-old that I just did not see this one or able to really know what was going on. So I had never known that Mick Jagger had released a solo album. In my mind, the Rolling Stones were like that rare band, especially in rock music, that didn't break up. I mean, the Beatles broke up. I mean, every other band. I mean, like the Fleetwood Mac has entire albums about breaking up. The Eagles, like, had an entire comeback based on the fact that they would never work together ever again. So it seemed like the Rolling Stones were that one band that never broke up. So I never thought about them even having solo albums. But evidently in 1983, the Stones moved from Atlantic Records to Columbia Records or CBS Records. And part of the deal that they negotiated, that Mick Jagger negotiated, unbeknownst to the rest of the group, was that he would get a record deal for 3 solo albums, as well as the new record deal for the band's regular albums. The rest of the band didn't know about this. And in fact, Keith Richards, who is probably the most well-known of the other Rolling Stones, you always think of Mick and Keith as sort of the two driving forces behind what we know of the Rolling Stones. I had no idea and was super upset. And this was part of their kind of any relationship going through its growing pains. And Mick decided that he wanted to do this solo album. And so the album came out in 1985. It's called She's the Boss. And I was flipping through Rolling Stones albums at Agarda about 2 weeks ago and found the original pressing of She's the Boss. I was so excited because I was like, hey, I've never heard of this. I wonder what it's about. It was only $5, so I'm like, this is totally within my range. I've now found out that you can get it on Amazon for $3.50, so I got ripped off. But I was super excited about it at the time. I brought it home, listened to it, started to dive in. It is an entirely different album than a regular Rolling Stones album, but it still has a lot of the same flair. And it was Mick Jagger deciding to do something that was different from the Stones, but not too different. In fact, as I was going through some of the stories at the time, the beautiful thing about the internet is that you can find just about anything. And I was able to pull up a literal scan of what looks to be microfilm from 1985 in the Boca Raton News. That is a review that came out on February 24th when She's the Boss came out in 1985 with an interview with Mick Jagger. And he said he wanted to do something different. He wanted to avoid doing the type of solo album that most people do when they get solo. And Jagger says, the only thing I was really thinking about when I made the solo album, and I'm not doing a Mick Jagger accent, that's also a thank you to anyone who's ever heard one of my British accents. I'm not doing it. That's my treat. The only thing that I was really thinking about when I made the solo album was that I wanted to avoid making one of those intensely personal, autobiographical, very serious, extremely sensitive, completely full of garbage records that so many of my colleagues have released when they've gone solo, as it were. Mick Jagger saying it as really only he could probably say, getting away with, being just really blunt and sort of offensive, but also very vague and not actually saying anything about individuals. So he makes this very much a pop rock album. It comes out in February of 1985. The lead single is Just Another Night, which goes all the way to number 12 on the pop charts and number 1 on the mainstream rock charts. The album itself is platinum. It is a hit in almost every country. Let's see, it certified platinum in Australia, Canada, New Zealand, United States, gold in Germany and Switzerland, and silver in the United Kingdom. So it sold tons of copies. But Keith Richards, in response to that, he was like, yeah, it sold a lot of copies. But it's kind of like in his 2010 memoir, Keith Richards referred to She's the Boss and compared it to Mein Kampf, in that everybody had a copy, but nobody listened to it. Just like everybody in Germany had a copy of Mein Kampf and nobody had read the book. Mm-hmm. It was a huge hit in that it was sold a ton of records. However, Richards didn't go on tour. It was a success, so he ended up making a second solo album, and there's a lot of analysis that says the success of She's the Boss and then him making a second solo album kind of played right into the mid 80s, lull of creativity that was the regular Rolling Stones albums. Some people, I read reviews saying that the next Rolling Stones album, Dirty Work, is their worst album completely, basically because you can feel the tension between the band on the album and no one sounds like they're having any fun, which is the one thing about the Rolling Stones, is that every song, more so than the lyrics, which especially when you look at it from, we're going to almost 40 years, 35 years since this album was released. Some of the tones and attitudes are definitely more than a little misogynistic. And that is something that has been a complaint about Rolling Stone's style for a long time in terms of the lyrics. But their attitude and the sound always sounded like they were having fun, or at least there was an atmospheric chemistry to it. And evidently in the mid 80s, I have not listened to Dirty Work. And after all the reviews I read, I am not super excited to find it. But it was pretty blasé, basically because the guys were fighting. However, they didn't break up, which kind of speaks to the fact that maybe they figured out that it wasn't working either as a solo group, or Mick trying to be solo, or the group needed to work through some stuff. But it's kind of impressive that after everyone else in the rock, genre seems to break up and get back together, and they were the real originators of what came to be hard rock, and they've still together. And they've they're announced another tour. I am hoping that I get to see them this next tour. I have decided that this year, when music comes back, I'm going to pick. I used to try to go to a ton of stuff, like smaller venue stuff, but I want to pick one or two things and just bite the bullet and pay the big ticket fee to see an arena show once again. And they're definitely on the list. I looked, and tickets are like $800 for some seats.
Ooh.
I'm going to find the one near the ceiling behind a post, and probably pay $150 for that one if I can. But I would love to see the Stones in concert. And going back to She's a Boss, it is a pop album. It is not a Rolling Stones album. It's very much a Mick Jagger album, but he got a ton of other people to work on the album with him. It was produced by Nile Rodgers, who had been producing Madonna and David Bowie at the time. You had Jeff Beck filling in on guitar. Herbie Hancock, who, for my generation, every time I say Herbie Hancock, I think of the scene in Tommy Boy when Tommy Boy is filling out his final at college, and somebody asks, one of the questions is who signed the Declaration of Independence, and instead of writing John Hancock, he writes Herbie Hancock. Herbie Hancock was an incredible organ player, which I did not realize. He also had several reggae artists play on the album. Pete Townsend played on one song. He got a ton of people to play with him and play a different style than he ever did with the Rolling Stones. And in fact, there's only one other Stone appears on the album at all, and there's one song that he co-wrote with Keith Richards. Otherwise, it is a completely Stoneless album other than Mick Jagger. It's definitely got 80s sort of funk and flair to it. It's really solidly produced in that it's really tight, but it doesn't have that same sort of messiness that comes with a Stones album that you love. So it's a different feel. But lately it's been one of those things I put on in the morning when I'm getting ready and kind of taking a shower, eating breakfast, getting ready for the day. And it's been nice to have in the background. I've enjoyed it. I think probably at this point I've listened to it about 15 times all the way through. Definitely think that there are better tracks than Just Another Night. That is the single and probably the biggest hit from the album. But Lonely at the Top is really good. Lucky in Love, the second single, might, in my opinion, be better than Just Another Night. And it has made me want to look more into the Mick Jagger catalog of solo albums. But more than anything, it's just been exciting to kind of see that even the great, a rock band that's considered probably top 5 bands of all time, especially in terms of album sales, even they went through the challenge of creative differences at one point. But unlike most bands, when they started working with other people, they eventually came back together and realized that they had it better and the grass wasn't greener on the other side. So if you're interested in checking out She's the Boss, I highly recommend that you visit your local rock store and find it, record store, I should say, and find it on vinyl. Evidently, you can get it for cheaper than the $5 that Adam got it for. You can also get it on Amazon for $3.97 as a LP, or you can also get it and download it on any of the streaming services, your Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music. It's all out there. So if you're looking for something new to listen to as you're getting ready for the day after you listen to all of the A-Side, B-Side podcast episodes, I highly recommend checking out She's the Boss by Mick Jagger for a little bit of early 80s nostalgia and a reminder that sometimes it's okay to want to try things out with different people, but you don't want to mess with a good thing when you got it.
Boom.
I guess you can't always get what you want. Huh.
Bum, bum.
And I do love the subtle rip of, I don't even think it's that subtle, but Keith Richards comparing She's the Boss to Mein Kampf in his autobiography. Oh, yeah. They do not.
That's very brutal.
That's very, yeah. They don't mess around like that. And when Mick Jagger talks about all the other solo albums that people have put together that are, and again, intensely personal, autobiographical, very serious, extremely sensitive, completely full of garbage. So that, which honestly, a lot of the times, solo albums do tend that direction. So. That was my adventure with the records and the A-side for this week.
Awesome. All right. So this week we are talking about, well, I'll tell you the name here in just a second. So it's been a little bit since we've talked about a female. And we know that just based on the past, female serial killers are very different than men, and men usually are like power killers or thrill seekers, whereas women
women traditionally kill for money or elevative status and often use poison.
Yes. Good. You've been paying attention.
I know. I'm so proud of myself.
So this week we are talking about a female serial killer. This is the story of Judy Buenoano. And yes, it is pronounced that. And we'll get into why she pronounces it incorrectly. But anyway. So her name is actually Judias. She was born Judias Welty in Hoyna, Texas. She was born the third of 4 children. Her youngest sibling was a brother named Robert. So when Judy was about 4, unfortunately, her mom passed away. I don't know exactly from what. So that meant that Judy, along with her little brother Robert, were sent to live with her grandparents for a little while. Well, Judy's father ended up remarrying, and Judy and Robert then moved to live with her father and his new wife in New Mexico. Mm-hmm. It's been reported that Judy was abused by both her father and her stepmother, and she was actually starved to death, and she was forced to work as a slave. Ugh. At the age of 14, Judy spent 2 months in prison for attacking her father, her stepmother, and her 2 stepbrothers. She left her brother alone, but she attacked the father, stepmother, and 2 stepbrothers, which, based on the reports, if she was abused and they did treat her like that, I mean...
It sounds like there was probably some substantial motivation.
I got it. So when she was released, she went to reform school, and she actually graduated in 1960 and became a nursing assistant. The next year, she gave birth to her son, Michael. In 1962, Judy married James Goodyear. James, 29 years old, was a sergeant in the U.S. Air Force. Judy, Michael, and James moved to Orlando and lived on McCoy Air Force Base. Now, no, James was not Michael's father. But just wait. So Judy and James had 2 more children, a boy and a girl, and James adopted Michael. So James dies on September 16th of 1971, and it was initially believed to be of natural causes. The man was 37 years old. Who's dying of natural causes at 37? Nobody thought that was suspicious?
Like heart attack, maybe?
I don't know. Healthy airman drops dead at 37. No one bats an eye. Sure. Okay. Whatever. But this was the 70s. So, whatever.
People were just dropping like flies.
Maybe. I don't know. So his death came a few months after returning from Vietnam. He had mysterious symptoms and he went to the hospital and died. So maybe they were like, he was in Vietnam. So whatever.
Yeah. I'm sure it would be easy to be like, well, that was probably something we didn't know about because it was from over there. So,
yeah. So after James's death, Judy collected money from his insurance policies, $28,000 in insurance and $64,000 in veterans benefits. Later that year, her house mysteriously caught fire and she collected even more insurance money. What? Her house got fire. What?
This seems to be a pattern.
Right. So a couple years later, in 1973, Judy moves in with then 34-year-old Joe Morris, aka Bobby Joe. Bobby Joe then decides to move to Colorado, and Judy and her kids pack up and move with them. Bobby Joe, once they move to Colorado, mysteriously starts suffering from a weird illness that nobody can place. He's admitted to the hospital, and at this time, no connections are made between illnesses because it's a whole new state.
Yeah, they're not they don't have the records. They're just like, well, there's this guy.
Right. So Bobby Joe, he's in the hospital. He starts to get better. He's released home, where he ends up collapsing, and that causes him to be readmitted to the hospital. So Bobby Joe died 2 days later. He died in January of 1978. So they moved to Colorado in 73. She lets a couple years go by, and then the illness starts. So and after Bobby Joe dies, Judy collects money on 3 different policies.
Dang.
Sometime later that year, Judy legally changed her name to Buenoano. She thought it meant good year, but, apparently Judy's not that great in Spanish because she forgot the tilde over the N, which makes it go from ano to año, which actually means year. So when Judy legally changed her name, she thought, like I said, she was changing it to Bueno Año, which would mean good year. Bueno Ano means good anus. Which
that's not great.
Hey, it might have worked for her too. I don't know.
Yeah, just depends on what you're trying to put out there.
Right.
Do you want to be a tire or do you want to work for a different profession?
So Judy's oldest son, Michael, joined the Army, and he was stationed at Fort Benning. So on his way to his assignment, he stops in to visit his mom in Florida. Because, before you actually get stationed, you have to go to basic training. I'm not sure where his basic training was at, but apparently, on the way after basic training and on the way to his duty station, he visits his mom in Florida.
Yeah, absolutely. Hasn't seen her in a while. Wants to say hi.
Fort Benning is in Georgia, by the way.
Probably once, like at a non-military meal, maybe.
Right. So, okay. So he goes to visit his mom in Florida. And, she obviously didn't sit so long because now she's in Florida, by the way.
Yeah. So she's gone from New Mexico to Florida, Florida to Colorado, Colorado back to Florida.
Texas to New Mexico.
Texas to Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot of change of address forms.
So once he gets to Fort Benning, Michael begins to show symptoms of poisoning, and doctors discovered abnormally high levels of arsenic in his blood. After
Oh,
a few weeks, the muscles in his arms and legs had atrophied, and he was unable to use his hands, and he needed metal leg braces to walk.
whoa.
So, ultimately, because now he can't walk, he can't use his legs, he's, I mean, just putting it bluntly, no use to the military, so he's discharged, sadly.
Yeah.
So he's discharged, and he's back to Florida to live with Judy, which, again, how is nobody suspecting her? But whatever.
Yeah. They were all like, well, that's weird. You got arsenic poisoning, but you're no use to us. So good luck.
Right. We're not going to try to help you figure out what happened. I mean, like, okay. So on May 13th, so again, her son is sent back to live with her. So on May 13th, 1980, Judy takes her two boys, James and Michael, out on a canoe in Florida's East River. While they're out on the water, somehow the canoe flips, it rolls, and all three fall in.
Uh-oh.
Judy and James, of course, fully functioning body parts, are able to swim to safety. But Michael is weighed down by his metal braces. And unfortunately, Michael drowns.
Oh, that's dark.
So after Michael's death, her son, Judy, collects $200,000 from his military benefits and decides it's time to open up a beauty salon.
Yeah, as you do.
Mm-hmm. So a couple years later, 1982, Judy was in a relationship. She started a relationship with John Gentry. So Judy and John, they move pretty fast. They start their relationship, early 1982. By October, they're engaged. Judy convinces her new fiance that it's a good idea that they should get life insurance policies on each other.
Yeah, just covering all the bases, want to make sure people you care for are provided for.
Right, just in case. So she also convinced John that he should take these special vitamins that she has for him because they're very healthy and she's just looking out for him.
Mm-hmm.
In December, now they're engaged in October, in December of 1982, John gets sick and he ends up in the hospital. So, of course, while he's in the hospital, he's not allowed to take these special vitamins. And when you know, John starts to get better.
Huh, that's weird.
Funnily enough, he starts to get on that mend. He's improving because he's not taking those vitamins or those vitamins, if you will. That's what happens when you watch too much Love Island. Again, no one suspects his fiance had poisoned him. So he's better and he's home. And in 1983, he's on his way to a liquor store. I mean, we've all been there. Sometimes you just need a little drinky drink.
Mm-hmm. Especially after you've been in and out of the hospital, you're celebrating perhaps.
Right. So he is on his way to the liquor store. His car explodes.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Plot twist.
So this Florida businessman who was minding his own business, just trying to get a little drink after a long week at work and being poisoned, is severely injured in the explosion.
Oh, it didn't kill him.
It didn't kill him. He survives. So now he's, in the hospital. He's recovering from his injuries, and police are, asking him questions, and they're asking about, all the different aspects in his life. And they start asking about Judy, and they realize some things just aren't lining up. They find some discrepancies in her stories and in her background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which, of course, leads them to further investigate, which then they find that Judy had been telling all of her friends that John was suffering from a terminal illness, and that they also discovered she had been giving John these special vitamins. In a search of the residence that John and Judy lived in the bedroom found tape and wire that matched the remains from the bomb in John's car.
It's never a good idea to switch your murder methods. That's when you get caught.
Sloppy Judy.
Yeah.
So the police also look into these special vitamins that they find, and it's revealed that these vitamins, not quite, well, they are special because they're poison. They actually contain arsenic and paraformaldehyde. So this leads to the exhumation. This discovery leads to the exhumation of Michael Goodyear, James Goodyear, and Bobby Joe Morris. Showed that all of them had actually had arsenic poison. Of course, Michael died from drowning, but he had been poisoned as well.
Yeah.
So up until this point, Judy had not been under suspicion or even investigated in any other death.
She gotten away with it. She opened up a beauty salon. She was making insurance collections left and right.
So Judy, of course, is arrested and she's charged. And in 1984, Judy Buenoano was convicted for the murder of Michael and the attempted murder of John Gentry. A year later, in 1985, she was also convicted for the murder of James Goodyear, her ex-husband. She was sentenced to 12 years for John Gentry, the attempted murder. She was sentenced to life in prison for the death of her son, Michael Goodyear, and for the death of her husband, James Goodyear, she was sentenced to death.
Ooh.
She was also convicted on multiple counts of grand theft auto for insurance fraud, and she is suspected of several acts of arson for the purpose of insurance fraud, along with multiple other deaths, including a murder in 1974 in Alabama. Talk about getting around.
Uh-huh.
And the 1980 death of her then boyfriend, Gerald Dossett. Nothing was ever proven in those cases. And she was already on death row when she became a suspect. So, like we've talked about before, sometimes it's in the interest of, saving the tax dollar when this person's in prison and, she's already sentenced to death, Yes, it's
amazing.
Family because it's not justice, but at the same time, what is she going to do? Get dead again?
Yeah. And unfortunately, in a lot of these cases, you cannot execute them for each of the murders they committed.
Right.
There was some way, if there was some like if we had like Doctor Strange, like we were talking about, you could do like the time stone thing and just like do it like 4 or 5 times. That would feel more justified. Yeah. But also kind of cruel.
Yeah. So Judy was incarcerated in the Florida Department of Corrections Broward Correctional Institution death row for women. On March 30th of 1998, at the age of 54, Judy was executed in the electric chair at the Florida State Prison. She had no final words. Her body was then cremated. Judy was the first woman executed in Florida since 1848, so over 150 years.
Ooh.
So she's the third woman in the United States to be executed since the reinstatement of the death penalty in 1976. Judy was referenced by a judge in her case as a Black widow. Her motive.
Yeah, not the Russian spy from the comics.
No, not Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah, the spider that kills its mates.
Yes. Of course, her motive.
And she was how old? 54 when she died?
54 when she died.
Man, she got a lot accomplished because that was after, I'm sure, after years of appeals and whatnot.
98 when she was put to death, and she was arrested in 84. So that's 14 years.
Yeah.
I mean, what, at 40? She was 40 when she was arrested and convicted. So imagine all the stuff she did by 40.
It's not impressive, but I mean, she was running through some people. I mean, there's several marriages in there and
morbidly
kids.
Impressive.
Yeah. She was not wasting time.
Right. She's like, I got things to do. I'm on a time schedule.
I got a beauty salon to open up.
And more kids to take out.
And more kids. Yeah.
Which
that's just, it's all bad, but the one with the canoe and the kid who's weakened because of your poison, that's some ugh, that's some evil stuff right there.
Which, I don't understand. And it could be that, once she got rid of John Gentry as she was planning, she may have moved on to another child. I don't know.
Yeah.
The other two, I'm grateful that they're okay. I just I don't know. Was she waiting to try to take them out, or I don't know.
Yeah. Didn't the insurance policies hadn't cleared yet?
Maybe.
Yeah. Or I mean, sometimes you save a kid for a rainy day.
When you need that second beauty parlor.
Yeah.
Franchise this. It's time to
That's right. Once it takes off, yeah.
But that's the story of Judy Buenoano.
Oh, I'm not trying to equate myself in any way, shape, or form to Judy Buenoano, but I do know the perils of thinking you know something in a language and then turning out you don't. My Spanish name in high school, I thought I was so clever. We're going through the entire classroom and everybody's picking their Spanish name, and I knew a word that wasn't English that meant snail. So I decided that my Spanish name would be escargot.
Oh.
Yeah. There's some ignorance for you. And then to her credit, the teacher made me keep it.
Good.
So she called me escargot for an entire year as my Spanish name to remind me that I didn't have any idea what I was talking about.
My goodness.
Which was some pretty good poetic justice.
My goodness. Escargot. That's going to be your nickname now.
Yeah, it's not the worst one I've had.
All right, but there you go. That's the B sound.
Well, Brooke, I'm glad we are back in our routine. I now know what day of the week it is, and I look forward to many more episodes.
Well, awesome. Me too. And I'm sorry that your days were so. Day count, would you call that? Your day count was so messed up because you didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, I have heard there are things called calendars that I could invest in, but I don't know. I just would rather just do a podcast once a week so I know what day it is.
Funny thing is, your phone tells you that day too.
Ah, that's true.
Yeah, but hey, whatever. At least you've got the podcast to tell you what day it is.
Yeah.
All right. So, of course, before we go, if you'd like to support the podcast, again, thanks to our friends in the Czech Republic for checking us out and helping us hit the popular list there. If you would like to support the podcast, you can do that in several ways. You can check out our website, Adam.
A-side, B-side, .square.site. Oh, so A-side, B-side, podcast.square.site.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. We'll just edit that out in post.
No, I'm leaving that in.
Yeah, I
know. You can find all of our sources. We'll have photos over there as well. And then while you're there, you can submit a story. Maybe you have a hometown. Maybe you have that guy, that girl from that show. Maybe you're like, oh, Adam, since you're into records, you should check out this and the backstory here. So you can do all of that on our website. Also, you can check out all of the merch. We've got some great there. You can also support.
I was just agreeing with you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You can also support the podcast by buying us a coffee, buymeacoffee.com/A-side-B-side-pod. And all of that goes to the promotion and production of A-side B-side podcast and some coffee too, because it is called Buy Me Coffee.
Yeah. Which is vital to the editing process.
It very much so is. You can also check out we've got Instagram, we've got Facebook, we've got Twitter. So check us out over there. You can also DM with us over there. I love the fact that we get DM messages and I love interacting. It's a lot of fun. So please do that.
Yeah, and you can always like and share any of those things on the social media, and then it'll pop up in your feed. Which is a great way to share us with people that are following you as well, which we'd appreciate a whole lot.
Oh, also YouTube. All of our podcasts are on YouTube as well.
Yeah.
And YouTube is fun because they do the captions.
Yes, which God bless those people for trying to figure out what I'm saying half the time. and this one especially, because this will be fun for the captioning, but Dekuji to our friends in the Czech Republic.
Is that thank you?
I hope so.
If you are in the Czech Republic, please let us know if Adam said that correctly.
And if I didn't, I am so sorry, and I didn't mean it. If it's something bad.
Dekuji?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right.
I mean, I've listened to it 100 times, and I've tried to re-say it, but at the end of the most recent Shang-Chi trailer, there's the exchange where Simu Liam is saying the character's name, and then Aquafina is trying to pronounce it, and they're both saying it differently the entire time. I felt like I was trapped in that moment when I was trying to say thank you in Czech. So it's my first time. I apologize.
All right. It's another episode of A-Side, B-Side podcast. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Brooke.
As always, thank you for listening to A-Side, B-Side podcast. If you enjoy the show, please, if you don't mind, head on over to Apple and leave us a rating or a review. And if you'd like to continue to support the podcast, you can do so by heading on over to Patreon, or you can buy us a coffee, as well as buying merch on our website, asidebsidepodcast.square.site. From Adam and I at A-Side, B-Side podcast, please remember to wear your mask, social distance if you're around people that don't live in your household, and just be safe and happy. Thanks again from us here at A-Side, B-Side podcast.